Settle in and rest as we embark on a serene journey into the world of mythology through the gentle pursuit of the Erinyes. In this soothing tale, you will join the divine enforcers of justice, the Erinyes, as they navigate the delicate balance between retribution and moral order in the timeless myth of Orestes. Let the whispers of ancient lore cradle you into a state of tranquility. And now, let the tale unfold. In the serene silence of dusk, Orestes found himself standing solemnly before the ancient temple of Apollo. He had traveled far, through days and nights suffused with the soft rains of autumn, to seek the guidance of the radiant god. The heavy gray clouds lingered above, casting an ethereal glow over the temple's silver pillars, framing a scene of contemplative reflection and steely resolve. Orestes was haunted by the memories, vivid and intrusive, of the day his world unraveled. It was the day he learned of his father Agamemnon's brutal murder, a grievous betrayal at the hands of his own mother, Clytemnestra, and her lover Aegisthus. His father, the mighty king who had once commanded armies and sailed to distant Troy, was gone. Orestes felt the weight of his blood-stained heritage, the expectations gleaming in the legacy of his name. This was not merely about vengeance. It was a quest for justice and the restoration of order in his shattered family. The stirring of the wind through the temple brought forth the divine presence of Apollo. The god's aura was calming yet brimming with authority, providing a beacon of light amid the young prince's inner turmoil. Apollo, with wisdom emanating from every word, urged Orestes to reclaim his father's honor, to fulfill the duty bound by blood and tears. Yet, beneath Apollo's guiding counsel was a cautionary undertone, hinting at the trials that lay ahead, not least among them the relentless pursuit of the Erinyes, ancient entities of vengeance and ends. Retribution. Orestes stood there, caught in a tumultuous wave of emotions that swept through his soul. His heart ached with conflicting allegiances, torn between the filial love for his mother and the demanding call of justice for his father. The warmth of his childhood memories clashed fiercely with the cold horror that had since enveloped his reality. It was Apollo's voice, constant and grounding, that reminded him of the balance that must be sought, even amid chaos. As the leaves rustled softly with the breeze, the visions of Agamemnon came to life in Orestes' mind. The spectral images, vivid and unyielding, were specters that hovered at the edges of his consciousness, urging him onward. They spoke of honor unsullied and justice long denied, driving him inexorably toward a path forged in retribution. Reassured by Apollo, whose divine presence offered both comfort and stern warning, Orestes understood that the path forward would be arduous, fraught with moral ambiguity, and shadowed by the inexorable Erinyes. These stewards of moral balance would ensure that the scales of justice would not tip without due consequence. Even so, Orestes was prepared to embrace the impending challenges, recognizing them as essential steps toward his own redemption and peace. With a determined heart, Orestes resolved to return to Mycenae. There he would confront the harsh truths embodied by Clytemnestra and Aegisthus. The road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, yet entwined with it was a clarity of purpose, an unyielding pursuit of truth, justice, and the restoration of what had been lost. As dusk descended fully into the embrace of night, the temple of Apollo stood witness to Orestes' vow, the gentle rain whispering promises of a journey both harrowing and redemptive. In the quiet sanctity of that moment, Orestes could already sense the looming presence of the Erinyes, a reminder of the divine balance that would soon follow him like an indelible shadow. Thus resolved, he turned away from the temple, stepping forward into the uncertainty awaiting him, his mind set upon the impending fate that would soon unfold. Under the shroud of night, Orestes returned to Mycenae, the city of his birthright. His journey was veiled by darkness, a deliberate choice to avoid unwanted eyes and ears. The weight of Apollo's words resonated within him, amplifying his resolve, but also the gravity of his task. Thus, as steady rain glossed the streets, Orestes crept through the silent alleys, each step measured and deliberate. The city, now under his mother's sway, felt foreign to him, a place once familiar now shrouded in desolation and unrest. His secretive return found its culmination at the grave of his father, Agamemnon. Here, amongst the shadows of the night and raindrops softly caressing the earth, he was met by his sister Electra. Her presence was a fragile warmth against the cold gloom, her eyes reflecting both love and the sorrow of prolonged burdens. Together, they stood before the gravestone, a solemn testament to their shared grief and lingering hope. As they reminisced about Agamemnon, the echoes of past joys and present pains intertwined. The crypt, a silent keeper of their lineage, bore witness to Electra's lament, her voice a gentle cascade in the night air. Words spilled forth of how their once proud house had crumbled under Clytemnestra's divisive rule. Beneath her dominion, a palpable sense of decay settled, one that neither of them could ignore. Yet, even steeped in her own sufferings, Electra sought reassurance in her brother's presence, hoping that his return would mark the end of their family's tumult. Electra's fears were an undercurrent, swelling with anxious urgency. She warned Orestes of Aegisthus, their mother's companion, whose cunning and malice had intertwined with the court's daily life. His influence loomed like a shadow over Orestes' intent, nudging the need for swift action. Electra pressed upon him the necessity of decisive retribution, her plea rooted deeply in both fear and love. Orestes listened, the rain upon the gravestone a rhythmic echo to his thoughts. In Electra's eyes, he saw not only his sister's suffering but also her strength. He promised her that he would not tarry, that the time for vengeance had indeed come. The promise hung between them, a silent vow as binding as any spoken aloud. He understood the stakes, not just in terms of justice for their father, but as a restoration of the natural order disrupted by Clytemnestra's betrayal. They plotted under the night's watchful gaze, whispering strategies shaped by urgency and the element of surprise. This would not be a battle heralded by grand declarations or open conflict, but one of silence and shadows. The approach would be swift and unexpected, catching both Clytemnestra and Aegisthus unawares. In the dark embrace of the cemetery, with only the gravestone as their witness, they embraced briefly, sharing a moment of familial solidarity before parting ways to set their plan into motion. Yet in those moments of shared determination and silent conspiracy, Orestes also felt the weight of Electra's burden more acutely. Her hope in him was a comforting but heavy mantle, woven with threads of desperation and faith. The knowing that her fate, along with his, hung precariously on the edge of their audacious intent intertwined his resolve with a more personal motive. He must succeed, not solely for the memory of Agamemnon, but for the continued existence of their house, and, more intimately, for Electra's peace. As the rain steadied its whisper, Orestes found himself drawn once more into the inexorable tide of his destiny. Here, standing by his father's tomb with Electra as both co-conspirator and confidant, he was reminded of the path set before him by Apollo, a path fraught with divine expectations and human frailties. With their plan both daunting and clear, and the shadows of their intentions looming large, the siblings parted ways. The night's cloak remained, veiling Mycenaean silence, as if holding its breath for the coming storm. Orestes' steps carried him forth, heart-weighed yet unyielding, as the anticipation of facing his mother and fulfilling his promise surged through him like the gathering tide. As the first light of dawn lightly touched the ancient city of Mycenae, Orestes moved silently through its quiet streets. The soft patter of gentle drizzle against cobblestones created an almost serene backdrop to his determined mission. Shadows clung to the grand walls of the palace he knew so well. Each step brought him closer to fulfilling the grim purpose made clear to him by visions of his father's death and the urging of those he trusted most. Clad in simple garb to blend into the surroundings, Orestes approached the palace, now a symbol of loss and betrayal. His mind was a tumult of emotions as he slipped past the watchful guards, remnants of earlier conversations with his sister echoing with each heartbeat. The corridors familiar from his youth were now hauntingly silent, save for the distant sound of raindrops that mirrored the tears long wept for his father. Inside the royal chambers, Orestes found Clytemnestra, his mother, who lay in a state between sleep and the day's awareness. She seemed regal in her repose, but the vulnerability of a mother in slumber could not be hidden. Memories of years past, of a time untainted by betrayal and bloodshed, flickered briefly before his eyes. Troubled by the past's ghostly embrace, Orestes hesitated, the weight of his task pressing upon him like an ancient curse. Clytemnestra awoke, sensing the presence of someone familiar yet distant. Her eyes, both regal and wary, met Orestes, and in them, he saw not only a queen, but the mother who once held him as an infant. As the sun climbed slowly into the sky, its light spilling over the chamber's adornments, she spoke. Her words were those of a woman caught between love and her own version of justice. She defended her actions, mentioning Iphigenia and the sacrifice she had avenged. A daughter taken too soon, a life snuffed out for winds to sail upon. The mention of his sister Iphigenia, who was lost to the machinations of gods and men, hit Orestes with the force of distant thunder. But his resolve, forged in the fires of grief and duty, could not be swayed. As he revealed his purpose, Clytemnestra gazed at him with a mixture of pride and resignation. The blade raised. It was not vengeance he sought, but justice, not hatred, but balance, and equilibrium restored. Steeling himself, Orestes accomplished the deed, his heart a maelstrom of emotions, yet none dominating the other. The quiet aftermath filled the room as the rain outside paused briefly, as if the world held its breath. As silence settled, Aegisthus entered, unsuspecting and assured in his dominance over the house he had usurped. Recognition collided with disbelief in his eyes, and a fight ensued. The clash was fierce, a tumult mirroring storms of old tales, with neither holding back the weight of intention behind their strikes. Orestes, fueled by an unwavering sense of duty, lost time and space amidst the struggle. The chambers bore witness to their struggle, until finally Orestes stood triumphant, his adversary fallen. Yet victory held no triumph for him, only the hollow echo of what once was. The chamber, now silent, save for the steady return of gentle rain upon the rooftops, seemed vast and foreign. As life ebbed from Aegisthus, Orestes surveyed the scene, not with a warrior's pride, but with the silence of a heart troubled by what had been necessary. He stood alone, surrounded by the relics of his past and the shifting sands of what was once home. The world outside the palace slowly awoke in the growing light of dawn, but within time lingered, marking the end of one chapter and leaving open questions of what would follow. Orestes' actions weighed heavily upon his soul, and he found himself on the brink, contemplating the path he had chosen and its outcomes. The quiet of the moment was profound, the palace now a witness to destiny fulfilled at a great cost. Thus, the first light of true dawn shone anew, illuminating the path ahead, the shadow of the Erinyes already stirring, unseen and patient. In that profound silence, Orestes knew the journey toward his own redemption was just beginning, and the pursuit of balance was far from over. As dawn broke over Mycenae, the air was thick with the heavy weight of deeds done and words unspoken. Orestes, the patricide, felt the murmurs of his actions spread through the city, like ripples across a still pond. The fleeting moments of triumph, marking the death of Clytemnestra and her consort Aegisthus, had evaporated, leaving behind an oppressive silence. This quietude made known the reality of his burden more than any outcry from the populace ever could. Haunted by the specter of his slain mother, Orestes wandered aimlessly through the shadowed corridors of the palace. The memories of her regal demeanor, her words invoking justice for his sacrificed sister Iphigenia, lingered, refusing to fade. In every reflective surface, he imagined her eyes gazing back, not with accusation, but an enigmatic stare that questioned the very essence of justice and duty. Then, slowly, Orestes began to detect an unsettling presence, creeping silently around him. The Erinyes, known to mortals as the Furies, did not manifest in a way seen by the eye, but through a growing unease that wrapped like tendrils around his heart. These divine enforcers of vengeance were drawn inexorably to the scent of spilled familial blood, pursuing with an intangible malevolence that was both felt and dreadfully known. Though he could not see them, their presence bore down upon him like a storm cloud gathering in the distant sky. With each passing moment, the weight of his guilt became harder to bear. His earlier determination and sense of purpose wavered beneath the relentless pressing of conscience and consequence. Desperate for a reprieve from this inner turmoil, he sought his sister Electra, whose steadfast loyalty and shared grief had been his anchor through the tempest of their suffering. Yet, even her presence, filled with understanding and resilience, offered little comfort to his troubled soul. The Erinyes, with their curse of relentless pursuit, were not swayed by tears, nor justified by the reasons of men. Orestes knew he had to flee the familiarity of Mycenae's walls to escape the impending doom. Mycenae, once a cradle of power and glory, now felt stifling under the shadow of his actions. The streets, the stones, and the very air whispered accusations as he hurriedly prepared to leave the place he had fought to reclaim. With a heart swift with fear and urgency, he departed into the countryside, where the broad expanse of the land and sky promised anonymity and refuge. As he ventured into the wilderness, the land was drenched in heavy rain, a reflection of the turmoil within his heart. The deluge obscured the path ahead, turning the familiar landscape into an alien and foreboding terrain. Raindrops merged with the tears unbidden from his haunted eyes, mingling in the earth beneath his feet. The forested borders of Mycenae, with their branches intertwining like the fates, appeared as dark sentinels standing vigil over his escape. Driven by desperation, Orestes sought sanctuary at an old temple hidden away from the roads trod by men. This temple, once a place of quiet worship, now offered a brief respite from the ceaseless storm both outside and within. Here, amidst the cracked stones and overgrown foliage, he found a semblance of solace, albeit temporary. Shielded by the temple's antiquated walls, Orestes gathered his thoughts, his mind reaching across the span of time to his old protector, the god Apollo. The weight of his past lingered heavily, yet he knew salvation might only be found with divine intervention. In the eerie stillness of the temple, his resolve hardened to seek out Apollo once more, hoping to glean wisdom to navigate the labyrinth path towards absolution and respite from the relentless pursuit of the Erinyes. As the relentless rain washed over the temple, the shadows lengthened, whispering of the trials yet to come. Each beat of his heart echoed with the certainty that his journey was far from over, much like the storm that thundered beyond these weathered walls, a reminder that divine justice was a balance only time and the gods could restore. In the quiet sanctuary of an ancient temple, with shadows of dwindling daylight stretching across its stone floor, Orestes stood consumed by inner turmoil. The events that had unfolded weighed heavily on his heart. His mother lay dead by his hand, and the cursed crown of vengeance lay squarely upon his brow. Yet now, beneath the twilight sky, he sought solace and wisdom from Apollo, the god who had guided him thus far even as the shadows pursued him. As the light rain began to fall gently outside, Orestes lifted his voice in earnest prayer, calling upon the divine patron he had revered since youth. His words, full of desperation and hope, mingled with the rain's soft patter, seeking to reach the ears of the oracle of Delphi, from whom light and clarity must come. In response, the air within the dimly lit temple seemed to warm and brighten, signaling Apollo's presence. The god, radiant with a calm demeanor, materialized before Orestes, observing the young prince with eyes that knew both the past and future. Apollo's presence was serene, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions within Orestes. With a gentle expression, Apollo acknowledged Orestes' plight, understanding the grip of guilt and the pursuit of the Erinyes that now haunted him. Such is the nature of cosmic balance, the god reminded him, a theme woven throughout the tapestry of mortal and divine lives alike. Apollo's words served not only to soothe Orestes, but also to clarify the role both must play in this delicate dance of justice and retribution. With thoughtful guidance, Apollo advised Orestes to journey to Athens, a city under the watchful and wise eye of Athena. There, the goddess of wisdom would decide upon the balance between vengeance and mercy. Apollo explained that in the court of divine judgment, Orestes might find the redemption and peace that eluded him. His path, though fraught with challenges, aligned with the divine will, Apollo assured him, providing a thread of hope for the weary traveler. Orestes listened intently, his spirit lifting with each word granted by the god. The thought of Athena's protection, her wisdom guiding an impartial trial, comforted him. Her role in seeking a resolution that transcends mere human justice, restoring equilibrium, resonated deeply with him. In this moment of contemplation, Orestes found himself confronted with the notion of justice, one that may exceed mortal comprehension yet strives for a righteous order. Renewed determination infused Orestes' heart, emboldened by Apollo's sage counsel. He understood that his journey toward Athens, though rife with uncertainty, must be undertaken with courage and faith. The light of Apollo still lingered within him as an assurance, whispering that truth and justice remained, coursing through the very fabric of the world. Orestes resolved to carry this newfound strength forward into his quest for restoration and balance. As twilight deepened and the rain subsided, Orestes readied himself for the journey ahead. With careful steps, he left the sanctuary of the temple, his mind filled with thoughts of what lay before him. The memory of Apollo's divine presence informed his resolve, an ever-present guide on the path to redemption. He felt both the weight and lift of divine expectations, stepping forward on the road that would lead him to Athena's chamber and her wise judgment. In silence, the temple and its surroundings returned to their timeless stillness, the ethereal light fading into the deepening night. Yet in Orestes' heart, hope ignited, a small ember fed by divine wisdom and the promise of justice. As he ventured into the night towards Athens, guided by Apollo's instruction, he felt the beginnings of a path to peace unfurled before him, promising a future free from the shadows that pursued him. The journey to Athens was nothing short of transformative for Orestes, both physically and spiritually. As he entered the grand city, he was enveloped by its majesty, a sprawling metropolis of marble and wisdom, perched upon the sacred grounds of civilization itself. Though the splendor of Athens was remarkable, it was the looming sanctuary of Athena that offered him solace amidst his turmoil. Here, within the serenity of the goddess's abode, he would prepare to face his reckoning. Stepping into Athena's sanctuary, Orestes was immediately struck by the peace that emanated from its hallowed spaces. The air was light, wrapped in a gentle mist that softened the morning light filtering through the olive trees. It was a sanctuary not just in name, but in spirit, offering a haven from the pressing weight of his past deeds. As he stood surrounded by the marble columns that bore the legacy of Athena's wisdom, Orestes found himself both comforted and contemplative. Athena herself came to greet him, her presence imbued with a calm strength that reassured more than any spoken word could. Her wisdom was a balm to his turbulent thoughts, her impartial judgments a light against the shadows of his guilt. Orestes felt the pull of this divine justice, a justice that promised balance and resolution. It was here, in the presence of the goddess, that Orestes allowed himself a moment of vulnerability, surrendering to her guidance as he prepared to face his trial. With Athena's comforting presence, the reality of the trial loomed before him as the culmination of his journey. Though his heart was uncertain, Orestes steeled himself for what lay ahead, finding fortitude in the clarity provided by the goddess. Mental preparation was an arduous task, requiring him to sift through the tangled strands of vengeance and justice that defined his past actions. But under Athena's guidance, he found determined resolution, ready to confront the consequences of his decisions. The council was soon arranged, a gathering of divine and mortal voices to weigh the fates that lingered on the edge of Orestes' trajectory. Athena's sanctuary transformed into a court of deliberation, where the strands of vengeance and justice would be examined under the goddess's impartial gaze. Orestes understood his position within this tableau, acknowledging the Erinyes' rightful role as bearers of vengeance, their presence a constant reminder of the ancestral curse that shadowed his family. As the gathering approached, Orestes delved deeper into reflections on morality and justice. The weight of his actions had not been light, each step echoing the ancient conflicts that had plagued his lineage. He pondered the nature of forgiveness, the divine balance of justice that Athena so fiercely upheld. It was a time for introspection and acceptance, a moment to reconcile the inner conflict that had driven him thus far. With the dawn of the gathering, the air in Athena's sanctuary shimmered with anticipation. Orestes felt the tension gently pressing upon him, not as a hurricane of chaos, but as a quiet reminder of the stakes involved. Each breath he took filled with the knowledge that soon his fate would be deliberated and decided by those who transcended mortal comprehension. Through Orestes' reflections and Athena's guidance, the stage was meticulously set for the trial that would determine the course of the remainder of his life. As the first light of dawn broke through the lingering mist of Athena's sanctuary, Orestes stood ready, prepared to face the judgments of the divine with a heart anchored in earnest resolve. Here unfolded the next chapter of his myth, not just as Orestes the Avenger, but as one who sought the eternal and ever-elusive balance of justice. As dawn slowly unfurled its fingers across the sky, the sacred grounds of the Areopagus began to come alive with the presence of both divine and mortal beings. It was a place steeped in solemnity, shrouded beneath the stormy cloak of the early morning sky. Lightning crackled sporadically, illuminating the gathered assembly with bursts of electric white. The charged atmosphere mirrored the tension of the upcoming trial, where justice, morality, and the very fate of Orestes would be deliberated. Orestes stood firm, his heart weighed with the gravity of past deeds and ancient family curses. Apollo, his divine guardian, stood resolute beside him. The god's presence brought a sliver of peace to Orestes, a reassuring reminder of divine justice and mercy. Apollo was more than a deity standing in defense. He was a beacon of hope amidst the storm, asserting that Orestes' actions, though steeped in blood, were ordained by a higher order. Yet the Erinyes, those relentless pursuers of justice, demanded their say. Manifesting from the shadows, they embodied the very essence of vengeance. Their eyes, like storm clouds, bore down upon Orestes, accusing him of disrupting the natural cycle by spilling kin blood. Their words were a piercing echo of ancient law and deep-seated duty, reminding all that the Furies' purpose was neither capricious nor cruel, but intrinsic to the cosmos' balance. As the Erinyes presented their argument, Orestes prepared to share his inner turmoil. His voice, though wavering, carried the weight of unfathomable pain and regret. He recounted the lingering curse that plagued his lineage, a tale saturated with suffering and loss. Orestes sought not to excuse his actions, but to highlight the inevitable catharsis his family had faced. It was a narrative as old as time itself, where the strands of love and retribution wove a complicated tapestry. Athena presided over the proceedings with a discerning countenance, her wisdom like a calm sea amidst the tempest. Her presence was the embodiment of impartiality, a divine scale poised to measure truth against justice, vengeance against redemption. Every word spoken was absorbed by her insightful gaze, as she contemplated the balance between chaos and order, between punishment and forgiveness. Debates over justice and morality unfolded like a complex dance, each participant providing a rhythm to the narrative. The gods spoke with authority and certitude, while mortals offered a more earthly understanding of consequence and suffering. There were conversations of laws both ancient and divine, of mercy so often interwoven with justice, and of the fickle nature of human morality. As the discussion stretched underneath the stormy heavens, tension thickened the air, with lightning punctuating bouts of silence. Apollo and the Erinyes stood at opposite poles, each embodying a polar aspect of justice. Divine views clashed with mortal insights, painting a vivid picture of the intricate tapestry that governed the universe. This was not merely a trial for Orestes, but a profound exploration of the principles that underpin existence. Orestes felt the pressure mount, his fate hanging in the balance. Yet, amidst the swirling debates, a tranquil nod from Athena flashed as a beacon of potential redemption. Her presence seemed to promise that whatever the outcome, the course would lead to some form of cosmic equilibrium. The storm within and around the assembly seemed to edge towards a resolution, the dawn hinting at the emerging light of understanding and consequence. As the trial continued under tumultuous skies, Orestes stood quietly in the center of it all. Here was a court not solely of tribunal or retribution, but of profound contemplation, where the composite of human actions would be weighed against the divine laws dictating retribution and forgiveness. The gravity of the narrative was palpable as Athena prepared to reach her judgment. The charged air seemed to crackle with anticipation, the coming decision imminent, ready to tilt the scales of justice into newfound harmony. Here on the Areopagus, under the watchful eyes of gods and mortals alike, the story of Orestes inched toward its final act, one where justice, balance, and peace awaited unveiling. As Athena rose to address the gathered assembly on the Areopagus, her presence lent a soothing calm to the previously charged atmosphere. Her eyes surveyed the faces of gods and mortals alike, each anticipating her decision. The brightening sky mirrored her tranquil authority, and the gentle autumn breeze seemed to underscore the solemnity of the moment. She began to speak, her voice resonating with a wisdom that transcended mortal and divine divides. Athena acknowledged the weighty issues before her, the spirals of vengeance into which families could be unwittingly drawn, and the enduring conflict between justice and mercy. To her, this matter represented an opportunity to evolve beyond traditional retribution. The dilemma faced by Orestes signified more than his personal plight. It was a reflection of deeper moral and societal questions that she believed must be addressed to foster a lasting peace. As she shared these thoughts, her words seemed to plant seeds of contemplation within those assembled. In her measured deliberation, Athena emphasized the importance of viewing justice as a force that could guide societies toward fairness while avoiding the pitfalls of unending cycles of revenge. With deliberate grace, she addressed the need for future generations to embrace a balance of male and female qualities, reason tempered by compassion, assertive action guided by understanding. It was a moment of teaching as much as it was a judgment, and the keen attention with which the assembly listened highlighted the significance of her pronouncements. When Athena announced the verdict, its implications resonated with a profound silence before a collective sigh marked the end of the uncertainty. The decision was split, reflecting the complexity of the issues at hand. However, her vote in favor of Orestes tilted the scales toward mercy and a new beginning. Her ruling was a testament to the need for progress in perception, where forgiveness becomes as powerful a tool as retribution. The Erinyes, long associated with relentless vengeance, listened as Athena spoke directly to the role they could play in this new order. She offered them honor and a place of high respect in Athens. They were to be recognized not as mere avengers, but as necessary keepers of moral balance. In accepting this role, the Erinyes were granted the honor they demanded, illustrating Athena's profound ability to integrate and harmonize diverse perspectives for the greater good. For Orestes, the relief was palpable, a physical release from a familial curse that had shadowed his life. The verdict liberated him from the torment of guilt and freed him to envision a future unbound by fear. It was as though he had been reintroduced to the world, where he could once again feel the warmth of hope and possibility, the lightness of a clear conscience buoying him toward the horizon. In an inspired gesture, Athena rechristened the Erinyes as the Eumenides, marking their transformation and promising them a coveted place within the city's tradition. This renaming was more than a mere change of title. It signified an enduring shift toward harmony and mutual respect, setting the groundwork for a society founded on balanced principles. As the skies above Athens continued to clear, the assembly broke into quiet conversation. The trial's outcome rippled outward, signaling the dawn of a more balanced world. The figures on the hill dispersed, each touched by the day's lessons, as Athena's wise intervention lingered like a gentle melody in the clear air. The impact of this verdict reached far beyond the present moment, echoing the eternal interplay between justice and mercy, and casting its light upon the future Orestes was now free to live. With a renewed spirit, Orestes took a moment to express his gratitude to Athena and Apollo, promising to honor the values their guidance had instilled. The transition heralded a new beginning, and the city of Athens stood as a testament to the enduring presence of divine justice in the mortal realm. With the trial at its end, a sense of serenity settled over Athens, bathing both gods and mortals in its tranquil embrace. Orestes stood amidst the temple of Athena, reflecting on the turmoil that had finally found resolution. The journey had been arduous, fraught with trials that tested the very core of his being. Yet now, he was free, a heavy burden lifted, leaving a sense of lightness and newfound purpose. He breathed deeply, letting the clarity of morning air fill his lungs and chase away the shadows of his past. Turning towards Athena, Orestes bowed his head in profound gratitude. The goddess, with her judicious presence, had offered him and his legacy a reprieve from the curse that had hounded his family for generations. Her wisdom was like a beacon, guiding him through the moral labyrinth of justice and vengeance. With a calm voice that resonated with authority and kindness, Athena reminded those present of the delicate balance between retribution and mercy, a balance that must be maintained to preserve moral order. In a transformation that would etch itself into the annals of time, the Erinyes, the tireless pursuers of vengeance, were reborn as the Eumenides. Once feared for their relentless pursuit of sinners, they now found themselves embraced and honored as revered guardians of justice. They were bestowed with a place of honor in Athens, a recognition of the indispensable role they played in maintaining the equilibrium between divine will and mortal actions. As the sun ascended higher into the clear cerulean sky, its warm rays painted Athena's temple in hues of golden pale blue. The city, in reverence, promised the Eumenides eternal homage, as gratitude flowed like a gentle river through the hearts of its people. Athenians would come to cherish these new deities, understanding that their transformation heralded a harmonious future, free from the edges of needless conflict. Orestes, watching the proceedings, felt a profound renewal within him. The laurels of this restored peace promised a new dawn for his house, where once there had been despair. The shadow of past deeds would no longer haunt him. Instead, he carried the knowledge of having faced those shadows with courage and resolve. His family's legacy, previously tainted by the cycles of revenge, now had the chance to flourish anew, unburdened by past transgressions. Acknowledging Athena's intricate role in crafting this newfound harmony, both Orestes and those present recognized the power of her wisdom in shifting the tides of destiny. Her judgment had not only gifted Orestes with freedom but also reshaped the very fabric of divine justice. The delicate balance she orchestrated ensured that future generations would learn from this tale of transformation and redemption. As the assembly began to disperse, the gods and mortals parted ways, their hearts at peace with the outcome. The presence of divine intervention served as a reminder that justice, when tempered with compassion and understanding, could mend even what seemed irreparable. The collective sigh of relief, felt by all, resonated through the streets of Athens, heralding the dawn of a harmonious era. As Orestes lingered at the temple, soaking in the serenity of the moment, he allowed himself to contemplate the journey he had traversed. The path had been fraught with uncertainty, yet it had ultimately led to this moment of grace and peace, a moment that set the stage for a future unmarred by the ghosts of vengeance. With one last glance at the temple, glowing under the morning sun, Orestes found newfound courage to step boldly into his future, steeped in the blessings of hope. The story of transformation and redemption, embodied by the renaming of the Erinyes, was one that would endure. For Orestes, and for the city of Athens, it marked the end of one chapter and the hopeful start of another. The harmony achieved here would not only guide Orestes forward, but also illuminate the path for those yet to come, ensuring that equilibrium reigned supreme. The sun rose gently over Delphi, casting its soft, golden light upon the sacred landscape. Orestes stood there, absorbing the warmth of the new day, while the memory of what had transpired in Athens lingered like a quiet echo. Here, at the sacred site of Delphi, the oracle stone lay before him, a symbol of the divine wisdom that had guided his tumultuous journey. This moment was his time for introspection, a chance to connect with the gods who had influenced his fate. Orestes offered praises to Apollo, whose strength and guidance had been a steadfast beacon in his darkest hours. He acknowledged the god's benevolence, recognizing that it was only under Apollo's protective light that he had arrived at this junction in his life. The trials of the past weighed heavily upon him no more. Now there was only a gratitude that filled his heart, a sense of fulfillment from having navigated the treacherous waters of familial strife, to find his place within the balance of justice and mercy. Reflecting on the cycle of vengeance, justice, and redemption that had shaped his existence, Orestes considered the lessons it imparted. His path had been fraught with pain and suffering, not only for himself, but for those he held dear. Yet, through the interwoven threads of these experiences, a tapestry of understanding had emerged. He discerned that vengeance, once a consuming fire, had given way to the enduring light of justice, tempered by the grace of forgiveness. The melodious song of birds reached his ears, breaking the silence with their gentle harmonies. They were heralds of peace, signaling a world renewed and in harmony with itself. In this tranquil atmosphere, Orestes gathered his inner tranquility, free now from the emotional chains that had bound him to the specter of his past. The peace he felt was akin to the serenity of the autumn morning that stretched out before him, where every leaf seemed to whisper the secrets of a simpler life, unfettered by the tumult of divine interventions. Deciding on his return to Mycenae was the next step in his journey, not just geographically, but spiritually. Orestes envisioned a future full of hope, where the lessons from his ordeal would guide him toward a life marked by harmony, and the virtuous leadership his family's legacy demanded. The shadows of guilt had dissipated, chased away by the promise of new beginnings and the light of redemption. He considered the steps he would take upon returning to the land he once fled in fear. This time, Mycenae would not just be a reminder of past sorrows, but a canvas for a future painted with hope and possibilities. The path unfolded before him, not as a road to atone for past misdeeds, but as a journey toward a bright horizon where he would shepherd new growth and learning for his people. With his heart at ease, Orestes turned to bid farewell to the gods who had watched over him. He gazed one last time at the temple of Apollo, appreciating the sacred fires that had lit his path with wisdom and protection. This was not an end, but rather the closing of a chapter, with many more stories still unwritten. Thus, Orestes departed Delphi, his mind calm and his spirit uplifted. The road wound back toward Mycenae, under the expansive dome of the clear morning sky, and in Orestes' heart there was a palpable feeling of peace and contentment, ready to embrace his destiny and lead his people with the foresight and wisdom born from divine intervention and personal revelation. One might say that his life had come full circle, but in truth, it was only just beginning anew. The sun cast long shadows across the roads of Mycenae, their lengths merging with the memories Orestes carried with him as he crossed the city boundary. The path he tread was familiar, yet appeared new under the clarity he brought back from his trials and introspection. Mycenae, once steeped in the sorrow of its past, now seemed to exhale a sense of restored order and normalcy, a quiet testament to the tides of change that had swept through his life. The townspeople, seeing Orestes return, paused in their daily tasks to acknowledge his presence, offering respectful nods and whispered words of welcome. They recognized the weight of his journey, both physical and moral, understanding the wisdom he had gained through his ordeal. Among the familiar faces, none was more cherished than Electress, who stood waiting at the gateway of their family home. Her eyes, filled with anticipation, softened into a warm embrace as Orestes approached. Gone were the shadows of fear and doubt that had marked their previous meetings. Replaced now by relief, Electra saw in her brother a newfound peace, a mixture of their shared history and the promise of a brighter future. In embracing her, Orestes found the unspoken affirmation of his journey's end, a poignant reminder that family bonds, tested by the fiercest storms, could still endure and flourish. As he made his way through the heart of Mycenae, the quiet strength of the city's people enveloped him. Each greeting and gesture of respect from the townsfolk helped untangle the memories of strife that had once gripped this place. Their smiles and nods were a balm to his soul, marking a collective willingness to move beyond the tragedies of the past toward a community healed by understanding and forgiveness. Orestes was no longer the harried soul fleeing from the consequences of vengeance. He returned as a man who had faced divine trials and emerged with a deeper comprehension of justice and balance. Taking time to visit Agamemnon's grave, Orestes carried with him flowers that symbolized serenity and remembrance. The site, previously a symbol of unrest and retribution, seemed to bask in the calm of the afternoon light. He knelt before the gravestone, placing the flowers gently upon it, each petal a token of gratitude and reconciliation. In this moment of quiet reflection, Orestes found solace in honoring his father's legacy with newfound peace. The turmoil that had clouded his mind was slowly replaced by visions of promise and renewal. The palace of Mycenae, standing as a sturdy testament to the passage of time, now symbolized restored harmony and justice. The stone walls held stories of chaos, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption, a balance achieved through trials he had not faced alone. Under Athena's guidance and Apollo's light, Orestes' journey was one of not just singular struggle, but of shared divine intervention that guided him toward peace. As he looked upon the palace grounds, he envisioned a future framed by the lessons of forgiveness, a future where his rule would strive to prevent the cycles of vengeance that had plagued his family for generations. Grateful for the journey that had led him back to Mycenae, Orestes contemplated what forgiveness truly meant in the broader scope of his life. It was more than the cessation of hostilities. It was an active commitment to understanding and compassion, a commitment he now vowed to uphold in both governance and personal relations. This newfound clarity became the foundation upon which he intended to build his future, a future unburdened by the guilt and unrest of past conflicts. The transformation Orestes underwent was evident not just in him, but in the way Mycenae began to see itself. The pursuit of vengeance, once the ruling force, gave way to an atmosphere of acceptance and growth. Memories of discord faded, replaced by the uplifting promise of unity and renewal. Mycenae stood ready to embrace a harmonious era that had been hard-earned through trial, and Orestes felt deeply the honor of sharing in this evolution. With the sun setting gently in the clear sky, Orestes' thoughts moved forward, toward the decisions he must make and the paths he would choose. His heart swelled with a profound tranquility, a reminder of the divine justice that had not only redeemed him, but had also restored balance to the lives entwined with his own. As he turned away from his father's grave and toward the life awaiting him, Orestes realized that peace was no longer a distant horizon, but a present reality. With peace now a part of him, Orestes turned his steps toward the palace, ready to embrace the duties and possibilities of a renewed Mycenae. His journey had been fraught with peril, both tangible and of the soul, yet it imparted wisdom that would guide him as a leader. Ascending to his role, Orestes undertook this responsibility with sobriety, the specters of his family's past guiding him, not as shadows of regret, but as teachers of invaluable lessons. Establishing laws that spoke not only of justice, but of mercy, Orestes sought to create a society that prevented the cycles of vengeance that had plagued his lineage. His laws emphasized restitution and forgiveness, allowing old grievances to transform into seeds of unity and strength. The people of Mycenae embraced these ideals, a harmony beginning to ripple through the land, resonating like a calm note held at the close of a choral hymn. Orestes envisioned a bright future before him, one where the past's grim specters could no longer cast their long shadows. With each new dawn, he saw the promise of days unburdened by the horrors his family had endured, a future rooted in peace and balance, nourished by the lessons learned. Visions of these possibilities emerged, painting the once turbulent horizon in the golden hues of hope. To memorialize the divine guidance that aided him through his trials, Orestes organized a sacred ritual. With the setting sun casting its warm light over Mycenae, they gathered to honor Athena for her discerning judgment and Apollo for his steadfast support. The air, tinged with the fragrance of olive branches and incense, shimmered with a renewed reverence as Orestes and his people offered their gratitude. In doing so, they acknowledged the divine wisdom that safeguarded them and ushered in an era of enlightened peace. Standing amidst this sacred gathering, Orestes contemplated how far he had come since the days he had felt so burdened by the past. From a son haunted by his duty, he was now a figure of serene contentment, a testament to redemption's potential. The transformation was not just his own. It extended to the land and its people, now free from the oppressive cycle of retribution. The story, which began with unsettling turmoil, concluded with a gentle reminder of life's cycle and the divine order expected to guide it. Orestes had come to embody the balance he learned from the gods, realizing that true leadership meant carrying forward the harmony between responsibility and compassion. An olive tree, steadfast and ancient, shaded the palace, reflecting his reign as one of peace. As Mycenae basked under the golden sunset, its ruler looked out over the horizon, envisioning a future imbued with hope and fairness. For Orestes and his people, this was not merely the end of their trials, but the dawn of a new period where justice and tranquility prevailed. Balance had been restored, and in this equilibrium, Orestes found his homecoming, simple yet profound, a return not only to a place but to a state of grace with echoes whispering assurance of divine guidance.